LA isn't too big. It's too badly designed. Los Angeles packs over 8,000 people per square mile, yet somehow requires a car to buy milk. Tokyo fits 16,000 people into the same space, and most residents walk to their corner store. The difference isn't density, but its design. So what happens if we strip away LA's car-obsessed blueprint and rebuild it using Tokyo's playbook? Would the freeways disappear? Could your commute shrink to a 10-minute train ride? Here's what a Tokyo-style Los Angeles would actually look like, and whether Southern California could ever make it work. LA's planning problems. Los Angeles wasn't always this way. Back in the 1920s, the city had one of the best streetcar systems in the world. The decline came from multiple forces working together. Automobile ownership exploded. Ridership dropped, and the system hemorrhaged money. Companies backed by General Motors bought struggling transit lines and converted them into buses, though the streetcars were already failing before that happened. By the time freeways arrived in the 1950s, the rails were gone and car dependency had taken root. The city sprawls over 502 square miles, but it's designed to keep everything separated. 75% of residential land is zoned for single-family homes, though recent state laws now allow some duplexes and lot splits. Still, apartments, shops, and offices remain largely separated from residential zones. You can't build a corner store in most residential areas. You can't open a cafe next to an apartment building without fighting City Hall. Everything is cordoned off, so people have to drive everywhere. This sprawl creates a vicious cycle. 73% of Angelenos drive alone to work, but only 6.8% use public transit. Metro ridership has actually dropped 19% since 2013, even though the city poured billions into new rail lines. The problem isn't the trains, but rather that neighborhoods were built for cars, not people. Zoom out. Los Angeles has been doubling down on car infrastructure for a century. The city dismantled its transit backbone, forced housing and businesses into separate zones, and built freeways instead of walkable streets. This is where it flips. Tokyo did the exact opposite. Tokyo's strengths: transit, zoning, density. Tokyo's rail system handles 40 million passenger trips daily, counting each transfer as a separate boarding. The system carries 14.6 billion trips annually, making it the most heavily used transit network on the planet. But here's what makes it work. It's not just about trains. Tokyo's zoning laws are the secret weapon. Japan uses 13 flexible land use zones instead of the hundreds of microzones American cities create. The system focuses on maximum nuisance levels rather than exclusive use. Lower categories still restrict certain activities, but small shops, dental clinics, and schools can locate in residential zones, as long as they stay below size thresholds and don't disrupt the neighborhood. This flexibility extends all the way up the chain. Category 1 zones allow low-rise housing and small businesses. Category 12 permits heavy industry, but every zone allows low-intensity uses too. If land is zoned commercial, you can still build housing there until a business shows up to buy it. This means housing can be built almost anywhere in the city, as long as it doesn't disrupt industrial operations. The result? Tokyo started construction on 150,000 housing units per year from 1995 to 2015. That constant pipeline keeps the market moving, even though Tokyo is one of the world's largest cities. Meanwhile, LA approved zoning for 10 million people in 1960, then cut it down to 4.5 million by 1990 through restrictive downzoning. Tokyo's density comes from consistent mid-rise development. Most residential areas feature medium-density neighborhoods, with buildings packed close together and shops on the ground floor. This creates walkable streets where people live, work, and shop in the same district. The entire city is built around transit-oriented development, with rail stations acting as neighborhood centers. Here's the part nobody tells you. Tokyo's system isn't perfect. The city faces housing affordability challenges, and land prices remain extremely high in central districts. Rents consume a significant portion of income for many residents, but the constant construction means supply at least tries to keep pace with demand in one of the world's most populated cities, applying Tokyo principles to LA. So what happens if Los Angeles adopts Tokyo's urban systems? Start with zoning. LA would collapse its hundreds of zone categories into 13 flexible tiers. Single-family zoning disappears. Every neighborhood can accommodate a mix of housing types, from apartments to townhomes to detached houses. This doesn't mean demolishing existing homes. It means when someone sells their property, the buyer has options. A developer could build a 4-unit apartment building on a single-family lot. A corner property could become a mixed-use building with retail on the ground floor and apartments above. Small businesses could open in residential areas without special permits. The transit system gets rebuilt from scratch. Tokyo's rail network has 0.24 stations per square kilometer. LA would need to multiply its rail coverage tenfold. New lines would connect every major neighborhood, with stations every half mile instead of every 3 miles. Bus routes would feed into rail hubs rather than competing with them. Development would cluster around stations. Every rail stop becomes a mini downtown, with apartments, shops, offices, and restaurants within walking distance. Buildings sit closer together and mix uses freely, creating the walkable density Tokyo's known for. Freeways don't disappear overnight, but they shrink. As transit improves and neighborhoods densify, car traffic drops naturally. Tokyo has 308 cars per 1,000 people, compared to LA's 743. Some freeway lanes convert to bus rapid transit corridors. Others get replaced with boulevards that would include bike lanes, sidewalks, and street-level retail. Now, watch what happens next. As neighborhoods become walkable, property values near transit stations skyrocket. This creates a funding mechanism. LA could use land value capture, which is a system where developers pay into transit expansion in exchange for building rights near stations. Tokyo's rail companies have used this model for decades, often operating department stores above their own stations to monetize foot traffic. Mock-up redesign. We could have something like Mid-Wilshire under Tokyo's system. Instead of low-rise buildings separated by parking lots, you'd see 5 to 70-story mixed-use structures lining Wilshire Boulevard. Ground floors hold restaurants, convenience stores, and coffee shops. Upper floors contain apartments and offices. Side streets have residential buildings with small businesses on corners. The Vermont Santa Monica Metro Station becomes a hub. Within a 5-minute walk, you'd find grocery stores, pharmacies, dry cleaners, gyms, and parks. No car required. The surrounding block's density gradually decreases, transitioning from mixed-use mid-rises near the station to low-rise residential buildings further out. The same pattern repeats across the city. Downtown LA keeps its towers, but the surrounding neighborhoods fill in with medium-density housing. Koreatown, Silver Lake, and Echo Park become true urban villages with transit at their cores. The San Fernando Valley trades its endless subdivisions for walkable neighborhoods centered on rail stations. Beaches like Santa Monica and Venice maintain their character but add density near transit corridors. Pacific Coast Highway gets dedicated bus lanes and bike paths. Beachfront properties stay low-rise, but blocks further inland fill with apartments and mixed-use buildings. South LA sees the biggest transformation. Areas that currently lack investment get new rail connections and mixed-use neighborhoods centered around stations. Economic integration follows as zoning allows for housing at all price points. The region's notorious segregation patterns begin to dissolve. Everyday life differences. Your daily routines look look completely different. Instead of driving 30 minutes to work, you walk 5 minutes to the nearest station. The train comes every 2 minutes during rush hour. Your commute takes 20 minutes total, and you spend it reading instead of sitting in traffic. Lunch means stepping out of your office and choosing between a dozen restaurants within a 5-minute walk. After work, you stop at the grocery store on your way to the station. Everything you need sits within a half-mile radius of your apartment. Weekends don't require driving to a destination. Your neighborhood has parks, shops, cafes, and entertainment options. Kids walk to school instead of waiting for buses. Elderly residents can age in place because transit and services remain accessible without a car. The air gets cleaner. LA currently has the worst traffic congestion in the nation, which produces massive air pollution. As car usage drops, smog levels fall. The city that was once synonymous with dirty air becomes known for clean streets and breathable air. Housing costs stabilize compared to other global cities. Tokyo's continuous construction helps maintain more moderate housing costs relative to cities like New York or London, though affordability remains challenging. LA's constant housing supply could prevent the displacement that currently drives gentrification and transit ridership losses. Could it actually work? The technical challenges are enormous. LA sprawls nearly 6 times Tokyo's core area. Building that much rail would cost hundreds of billions of dollars and take decades. Retrofitting car-dependent neighborhoods for walkability requires tearing up parking lots and widening sidewalks. Political resistance would be fierce. Every zoning change faces opposition from homeowners who benefited from the old system. Neighborhoods fight density, fearing increased traffic and changing character. Businesses built around car access worry about losing their customers. But some pieces are already moving. LA voters approved Measure HLA in 2024, requiring the city to rapidly build protected bike lanes and pedestrian improvements. State laws now override local zoning to allow more housing near transit developers and building transit-oriented projects in neighborhoods that finally change their zoning codes. The real question isn't whether LA could technically implement Tokyo's system, but rather whether residents would accept the trade-offs. Tokyo's model works because Japanese culture emphasizes collective benefits over individual property rights. American culture, particularly in California, prioritizes property owner autonomy. Convincing millions of homeowners to accept apartment buildings in their neighborhoods requires a massive cultural shift. Money prevents another hurdle. Vienna builds affordable housing for $275,000 per unit. LA's supportive housing costs $600,000 per unit. If the city adopted Tokyo's zoning rules, construction costs would remain double Tokyo's due to labor, materials, and regulatory expenses. Final thoughts. Los Angeles as Tokyo would be unrecognizable. The freeways that define the cityscape would shrink. Neighborhoods that currently feel like suburbs would transform into bustling urban villages. The car culture that shaped Southern California for a century would give way to trains, bikes, and walking. This transformation would take decades, cost trillions, and face constant opposition. Every neighborhood would fight density. Every homeowner would resist change. Every business would demand parking. The political will required to push through these changes barely exists in American cities. But the alternative is watching LA's current trajectory play out. Traffic worsens every year. Housing costs keep rising. Homelessness increases as affordable units disappear. Transit ridership continues falling, even as the city builds new lines. Tokyo proves that density, walkability, and transit can coexist with high quality of life. The city houses 37 million people in the metropolitan area while maintaining excellent air quality, low crime, and abundant green space. Tokyo's zoning flexibility allows the city to adapt to changing needs without the decade-long battles that plague American cities. Los Angeles could adopt pieces of this system without going full Tokyo, simplifying zoning codes, allowing more mixed-use development, and prioritizing transit over cars would move the city in the right direction. Small changes like letting homeowners build accessory dwelling units or permitting local businesses in residential areas could improve walkability without demolishing entire neighborhoods.